Today, we attempt to provide that which universities can best provide, a forum for reasoned, respectful, and informed discussion of a difficult and complex issue. We're fortunate to have with us today a distinguished group of panelists to help us navigate this issue. Cardinal Roger Mahoney of Los Angeles, Senator Mel Martinez of Florida, Governor Janet Napolitano of Arizona, and Mayor Lou Barletta of Hazleton, Pennsylvania. We welcome each of them here and thank them for being with us. And now, please help me to welcome the senior correspondent for the NewsHour with Jim Lehrer, a trusted and distinguished journalist who has spent more than 30 years examining our world's greatest issues. His accolades are many through his distinguished career and include best-selling author, acclaimed reporter, esteemed journalist, father, and husband. Please help me to welcome to Notre Dame Mr. Ray Suarez. Great to have you here, Ray. Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to be with you and great to see the fabulous turnout. I'm flattered to be asked to help guide this conversation through what has turned out to be a hot, emotional nationwide conversation that, unlike previous debates about immigration, touches every corner of our country and every corner of our national life, who we think we are and who the rest of the world thinks we are. What it has meant in the past to embrace the identity of an American, and what it means and what it should mean in 2007. We are in intense argument about the responsibility of the national government and local governments, what obligations are carried by those of us already here and those of us who want to come here and go to work. The Suarez family, the Napolitano family, the Barletta family, the Martinez family, the Mahoney family, all came here from somewhere else on the planet, just as it's pretty likely yours did. But during the last great surge tide of immigrants from the rest of the world 100 years ago, America was labor hungry, and while it's true that many of your forebears came here legally, what constituted coming here legally a century ago was almost laughable in its lack of rigor. But at the same time, this is not 1961 or 1921 or 1891. How much do yellowing documents in the National Archive or a cherished sepia-toned photograph of your ancestors, now long dead, tell us about how we're supposed to proceed today? Last night, I flew home from an international conference in Italy. So, if I act a little whacked out later, you'll have to forgive me. I'm still on Venice time. Now, Saturday morning, Tony Blair pondered what his country should tell the people who want to come to Britain from other parts of the world. Should they be made to promise to support the British way of life, not only to work and live in peace, but also in tolerance with their neighbors of every religious and ideological stripe? The former Prime Minister's country was attacked by legally resident citizens of immigrant stock, recently headed off an attack in the making, and is now wondering who will constitute a threat in the future, and wondering if people who don't buy into the British way of life should be deported. Saturday night, I took a walk through the streets of Venice with my friend and fellow journalist, Moises Naim, an immigrant himself from Venezuela. Lining the shopping streets where the most famous names in high fashion had their shops: Prada, Fendi, Bottega Veneta, Gucci, Loro Piana, were block after block of West African immigrants selling knockoff bags on blankets on the street, carrying the same names as the bags in the windows in the store, made in China and selling for a fraction of the price. Naim has written about the lives of these men and others in his recent book. He told me of their desperation, their marginal living, their hunger and constant fear of deportation. People have poured into Italy from every corner of the globe as the country has become richer, grayer, and gives birth to fewer children. Last week, I was at a Washington fundraiser for a DC social service agency that provides health care for the fast-growing Latino population of that city. And one of the speakers was a young fellow who came to the U.S. from Honduras as a child. He was the valedictorian of his high school graduating class and was accepted to the famous, historically black college, Tuskegee University. But he can't go there because he's out of status. He's in the country illegally, but he's not going back to Honduras either, a place he has no memory of. But he's barred from further success in this country because he can't pay the tuition charged to an international student, which is by law what Tuskegee must consider him. So I think our panel today is more than up to the task of recognizing and confronting these complexities. We're joined today at the Notre Dame Forum by Senator Mel Martinez, Republican of Florida, who came to this country from Cuba in the 1960s, is a leading voice in the national debate on immigration, and is chairman of the Republican National Committee. Please welcome Mel Martinez. We're also joined today by Governor Janet Napolitano of Arizona. She must speak to her state, to the federal government, protect her citizens' economic and social interests and welfare. Before she was elected governor, she was Attorney General of Arizona. Before that, a U.S. attorney. So she knows this from both the federal and state enforcement side. Governor Janet Napolitano. We're also joined today by Mayor Louis J. Barletta of Hazleton, Pennsylvania, who introduced a controversial municipal ordinance aimed at discouraging undocumented immigrants from settling in his city and attracted interest from around the country to a small city government that maintained the U.S. was not doing its job in managing immigration. Mayor Louis Barletta. And finally, His Eminence Cardinal Roger Mahony of Los Angeles, leader of the largest diocese in the United States and an advocate for the protection of immigrants. The Cardinal Archbishop of Los Angeles, Roger Mahony. All of our panelists have been asked to prepare opening remarks that are both elegant and brief. We will begin with those, starting with Senator Martinez.
Well, thank you very much. It's a really great pleasure and honor to be here at Notre Dame to discuss this very, very important issue, and it should be very fitting that we do so here. As Ray told you, I'm an immigrant to America. I happen to be the only immigrant in the United States Senate. So as this debate unfolded, it gave me a unique role to play, and one that I tried to play to the best of my ability. Unfortunately, we in the Congress failed our challenge, did not meet our test, and did not pass an immigration bill that would be worthy of our country and that was so much needed by our nation. Unfortunately, it was derailed, even though many of us fought hard for a comprehensive solution to this immigration problem, one that I think is what the country needs, one that looks at securing the border, but also goes further than that and also recognizes that this nation needs a labor force. It would have had a component of a guest workers program, as well as interior enforcement measures, but most of all, it would also have had a way of dealing with the 12 million or so illegals or undocumented that are living here in this country. And as to those that tried to manage a very difficult issue in a way that I think was consistent with the type of country that we are. It is important that as we go forward in this debate, that we understand that there is a crisis in confidence in government. There is a crisis in that Americans did not have the confidence and the trust that our government would and could enforce our immigration laws, that it could and would enforce border security. And as a result of that failure in confidence, there was a widespread opposition to an immigration reform measure. We are moving forward with certain aspects of border control, imperfect as that may be. And I hope we're moving forward as a result of what's currently taking place in our nation. We're having a discussion about who our next president should be. In the course of that discussion and debate, that we will have a national conversation like we're doing here today about this very important topic, so that we can come together as a nation, consistent to our values of a nation of laws, but also hearkening to our heritage as a nation of immigrants, and find a solution that is good for America, and one that can be, frankly, an example to the rest of the world of how to deal with this vexing and difficult issue. Delighted to be here with you today. Thank you for having me, and look forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Senator. Governor?
Well, thank you, and thank you to Notre Dame for having this topic, this very important topic, for discussion today. In 2006 in Arizona, we apprehended 4,000 illegal immigrants a day. We found 200 bodies in the desert, people desperate to cross. Of 34,000 inmates in our prison system, approximately 4,000 are in the country illegally, with the state taxpayers are paying their costs of incarceration. We are at really the forefront of the illegal immigration debate. And I join the senator when he says we need comprehensive immigration reform. That includes revising the number of visas that are allowed. This is basically a labor migration. We need to recognize that. People can get visas, come through the ports of entry legally, so we know who they are, where they're going, how long they're entitled to stay. We need to have better documentation. We need to deal with some of the issues about temporary workers in perhaps a different way than we do now. And we need to have border security, and I have, as Ray mentioned, been on the front lines of that for a number of years now. I will share with you, however, that those who will tell you that we can simply build a wall and solve our immigration problem have never been to the border. They've never been there. You can't do it. As I like to say, you show me a 15-foot wall and I will show you a 16-foot ladder. That's the way that works. Or a tunnel underneath the wall, either way. But border security indeed needs to be enhanced so that the American people have confidence that when we do get comprehensive immigration reform, it will be a law that's enforceable and a law that is enforced. And finally, one last point. The really hard part of this debate, and one of the reasons I think the bill failed in the Congress, was what to do with the 12 million who already are here. And in that regard, the cover on the program perhaps is a bit misleading, because the 12 million who are already here, some are maybe in this very auditorium. They are people who are mowing our lawns, they are cooking in our restaurants, they're putting roofs on our houses, they are child care workers, they are teachers' assistants, they are raising families throughout the United States. And dealing with those 12 million who already are here and have raised their families here, albeit without legal documentation, is a very difficult issue to confront, and one I hope that this dialogue today helps illuminate. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. Mayor Barletta?
Thank you. Hazleton is a small town in northeastern Pennsylvania. The greatest asset of this little city is the quality of life that we enjoy. It's a city that senior citizens like to sit on the porch and talk to their neighbors, and young parents like to allow their children to play on the playgrounds unattended. Illegal immigration has changed our life in Hazleton. Many violent crimes that have been committed by illegal aliens in the city of Hazleton have now terrified senior citizens. Parents no longer allow their children to play on playgrounds. The final straw for me came on May 10th last year. It was a beautiful day like today when we arrested a 14-year-old illegal alien for shooting a gun on a crowded playground while children were on the swings and on the sliding boards. I remember going home that night and telling my wife that I had lost control of this great little city. I could no longer control what was happening. Later that night, I got a call from the chief of police. A 29-year-old city man was shot between the eyes by 2 illegal aliens. The following week, 2 major businesses in downtown were closed, more illegal aliens. And the following week, gang-related graffiti that was threatening the lives of our police officers, and I've had enough. Our city, our small budget, could not withstand the drain that illegal immigration was causing. Every time we send a code enforcement officer, a health officer, a police officer, a fireman to an incident involving an illegal alien, it was draining our resources. Our city budget is now in the red, which means that I will again have to cut services to the legal, hardworking taxpayers of our city. I passed a law that would punish businesses and landlords who knowingly hire illegal aliens or knowingly harbor illegal aliens. The city was sued, and we will appeal this decision to the Third Circuit Court in Philadelphia. I believe it was the federal government's inaction that has caused cities like mine to have to protect ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Your Eminence?
It's good to be here today with all of you, and especially these wonderful panelists. I'd like to have you as students particularly leave here today understanding three things. Number one, why is the Catholic Church involved in this issue? Secondly, why is it we don't have immigration reform? And thirdly, what does the church propose to do to get immigration reform? And later at the end of the program, I have an assignment just for all of the students. Yeah. But I'll give that to you a little later. But first, very importantly, why is the church involved in this? Well, it really starts with the Old Testament and the instructions God gave Moses and all the people on how to welcome aliens. And then Jesus Christ in the Gospels, especially in Matthew 25, when he tells us that part of our recognition of Jesus in the world is to see in the face of the most helpless the face of Jesus. And one of those groups he mentions by name are the strangers, the aliens in your midst. So historically, from the time of Jesus, we have always been welcoming of everyone. In this country, since the 1780s, the Catholic Church has been with, has stood with, has walked with every single wave of immigrants. That is a moral imperative for us, because this is not just a legal, economic, social issue. It's a humanitarian issue. And therefore, it has important moral and ethical dimensions. And we will be with immigrants every wave today in the years to come. I refer to the Catholic Church as immigrants are us, as in the toy stores, because that's who we are. We are an immigrant church, we are a pilgrim church, and we've always been so, and we will always be so. And secondly, then, what happened? How come we're in this situation? And I couldn't agree more with the governor. We have a moral responsibility to deal with the 12 million people who are here. But I'm saddened and disappointed at the inability of our Congress, and especially most recently the Senate, to pass meaningful legislation, meaningful and comprehensive immigration reform. That is a real tragedy. So what happens is, by not giving us the kind of system we need to regulate and legalize the flow of immigrant peoples, we end up with the chaos that we have. We have created a paradox. We have built this wall along the border, but we have put up two signs. One sign says, "Help wanted." And a few feet down, another sign that says, "No trespassing." In other words, we have created the magnet for employment and jobs and the need for them, and I can certainly speak to this from the California experience, but we have not created the mechanism whereby we can make a legal transfer of people to accomplish the jobs and the economy we have. Now, so finally then, what does the Catholic Church propose? We propose that all aspects of immigration be addressed comprehensively. That is, fixing one or two pieces of the whole puzzle do not give us a lasting and just solution. So enforcement-only approaches do not deal with the great need in agriculture to have temporary workers. The building bigger fences simply don't accomplish it. So those are the things that we propose as the Catholic Church, and I'm proud that you're here and listening to this debate. Thank you.
You know, again, I received a letter from a gentleman in Southern California that wrote to me to tell me that he had just lost his job in construction to a illegal immigrant. Not only had he lost his job, but he also lost his sister-in-law, who was a 16-year-old girl who had just had an argument with her high school sweetheart, and they were walking along, making up, when an illegal alien drove off the road, hitting both, killing the boy. As his sister-in-law was thrown onto the roof of the car, her arm got stuck in the roof rack, and he drove 6 miles. And he wrote on to tell me that, Mr. Mayor, you're not being a racist, you're standing up for other Americans. And it's letters like that that I realize there are so many other people who are affected, who are victims of illegal immigration, who we may never hear about.
Maybe you're both right, in that there are some jobs where the wage rates are being bid down by people who are not in the country legally, but in the attempts in the past to deal with this, agriculture has been cut an exception because we see it in a different way. Its labor force needs are just different from other jobs. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, first of all, I don't think we can mix what is an automobile accident that happens anywhere. It happens to be an illegal driving the car, but that doesn't make it. Sad automobile accidents happen. But anyway, in Florida, the experience is very similar to what you would have in California. A third of the orange crop or the citrus crop in Florida last year went unharvested because there weren't enough workers to pick it. When it comes to hotels, you know, we have a great, wonderful attraction in my home city of Orlando. There are many hotels, the maid workers, the restaurant helpers, and so forth. A huge number of them are part of an illegal workforce. They're not displacing anyone. I promise you, in Orlando, people are not standing in line at the Disney gate and they're picking the illegals over the legals. That just doesn't happen. I suppose it could happen someplace, sometime, somewhere, but I just don't think as a generalized matter that that is really what is at issue.
You know, when you talk about displacement of workers, there's probably a differential in different parts of the United States. And by not having kind of a federal look at this, different people are affected differently. But I will share with you that in Arizona, it's been part of the Sun Belt. By and large, we have a labor shortage. We can use the labor. And if there's a wage issue, that in part, I think, is contributed to by having so many who are in this gray area, neither legal nor going, they're just here, they're working, and we're willing to tolerate that. Arizona has just passed its own employer sanctions bill. I signed it into law. It goes into effect in January. I agree with the mayor to the point that if we're going to deal with illegal immigration and the federal Congress is unable to, the states and the cities are going to have to fill in. And you can't just deal with it by punishing the illegal immigrant. You've got to deal with the employer who's intentionally and repeatedly going into that market to exploit it for cheap labor. And there should be a penalty to pay for that. And like I said, our state is going to step up and do its own work there in light of the federal failure.
Mayor, why don't you explain how the law in Hazleton works?
Sure.
I think people should understand just what you did.
It's very important. The law that we created in Hazleton does not regulate immigration in any way or form. It is only after the federal government determines that a person is in the country illegally will we suspend the business license of the business that knowingly hired the illegal alien. Again, it is only after the federal government determines someone is here illegally that we will suspend the license of the landlord who knowingly rents to the illegal alien. On the landlord portion, all tenants will come to City Hall for a permit, regardless if you were born and raised in Hazleton or you were just moved into the city. No landlord will be allowed to make that determination. We do not want anyone discriminating against any individual. As long as you show proper identification, you will be given a permit. No one will be denied a permit. If a landlord is found to have someone staying on their property without a permit, and that person is an illegal alien, there will be an additional fine onto the landlord. So it is not where the city is crossing the line and trying to determine someone's immigration status. We are punishing businesses because it is illegal for businesses to hire illegal aliens. It is illegal for landlords to rent to illegal aliens. So we will suspend the business license in hopes that that will discourage businesses from hiring.
Well, I can assure you that the Catholic Church is not about to do this. We will serve everybody who comes. We will never be asking for documents. We will never, for our schools, our parishes, the sacraments, whatever. We're just not going there. And what I find very disconcerting about the Alma and some of the aspects in Hazleton is the fact that it's creating a fear across all kinds of immigrant groups across the country, especially those who are here legally, because everybody is being looked at suspiciously. And I think that is not the American way. I think that is destructive, divisive, and I think it's going to diminish the sense of unity we have. So rather than keep going down this road, we've got to get the Senate and the Congress to fix the big problem.
I want you to talk a little bit more about what you said at the beginning, that we're just not going to do that. Can the Catholic Church take an a la carte view toward a local civil code? Say, well, these laws seem to us to be okay, so we're going to follow them. But as the church, these other books, these other laws on the books, we're not so happy with, so we're not going to follow them. And we're not going to ask that any of our agencies or employees do either.
Well, let me put it this way. We see people as creatures of God, as brothers and sisters. And we see law as being at the service of all of us and the common good of the community. But if there is a law passed that restricts our right to follow the gospel and to minister to people and to offer health care, education, counseling, whatever, spiritual pastoral programs, if there's a law passed, we have a higher law that supersedes it.
Now, you used to be the chief law enforcement officer of the state of Arizona. What do you think of what you just heard?
I think there's a difference to be drawn here. I do not think the church is exempt from the immigration law, the civil law, the criminal law, be that as it may. That doesn't prevent the church from providing spiritual ministration to the almas of the world. To me, these are not mutually exclusive concepts at all times. And I will say this, and the Cardinal made a very important point. The allowance of this problem to fester for years, as it has been very destructive to political discourse in this country, in my state. And it has become incredibly divisive and vitriolic. And as if there's no capability of taking a very complicated topic and bringing it back together. We rely on our federal institutions to help get us there. They have not been successful at that. But I fear that with the lack of a reform that the people of America believe in and have faith will be enforced, not just any law passed, but one that they have confidence will be enforced, that we're going to see increasing divisiveness, and that is something the church is also going to have to deal with.
Do we know in any reliable way whether on balance the 12 million that we've been talking about bring more or subtract more from the nation's economy in aggregate?
I haven't seen any specific studies, but I have to tell you that I think my own understanding of it from a Florida perspective is that by and large it is a hardworking group of people that are here seeking to better themselves, most often to help their families back home. You have to look at the number of remittances that are going back to Colombia, to the Central American countries, to Mexico. They're in the billions of dollars, and these are the monies that people are saving beyond their livelihood here to send to their families back home. Alma, I think, alluded to that in her statement. And so I think by and large, they're a hardworking group of people. It would be better if we had a legal system where people can come legally, and also there's a guest worker program that we can then have that function of the demand for labor the Cardinal spoke about at the beginning met through legal means. That would be the better way. That's why I agree with the others. A comprehensive approach at the federal level is what we must do. That's why I was so disheartened when we didn't get there this past year, and I'm equally disheartened that we may not get there until after the next electoral cycle, because that may be what it takes. But I think by and large, it's a hardworking, productive, and constructive group of people.
You know, I guess it depends on what study you believe. Bear Stearns, for example, did a study that illegal immigration costs the American taxpayers $65 billion a year. Through my own experience governing a small city, I could tell you the economic effect it has had on us. Our population in Hazleton has grown by 50% since the year 2000, which is a huge increase in population. Our earned income tax, which is our main source of revenue, has remained the same, which means that it is more difficult for me to provide the level of public service that we should be providing. And when that happens in a small community, in small cities where every dollar makes a difference, where every man-hour means something to the people living there, it eventually affects the quality of life. It erodes the quality of life. And when you erode the quality of life of small-town America, I don't believe it's America anymore. People move to Hazleton and cities like that to get away from many of the big city problems. When you take that away, we don't have many assets to offer people to move or stay there, and it becomes devastating.
Now, Pennsylvania is a state where the population has been declining over recent census reports. Hazleton itself is down from its historic high in population. Doesn't that influx create, for instance, a market in real estate that you wouldn't have otherwise, with declining demand for for the homes and dwellings and structures in your town?
An increase in new immigrants does, absolutely. We want to continue to welcome the new immigrants who have called Hazleton home. However, illegal immigration is something totally different. And I believe this should not be about making money. This should not be all about money. It should be about the rule of law and what it means to come to America, of valuing this land and the opportunities it has to offer. And I believe that's unfair to the new immigrants that came here through the legal process. I believe that's unfair, and it's taking away much of what I believe America stands for.
Doesn't part of this question, Governor, depend on who you ask? From a mayor's point of view, he looks at revenue declining because he doesn't get that earned income tax. But from Senator Martinez's perch, if he talks to the controller at Social Security, it turns out billions are being collected in Social Security that aren't going to be collected by qualified recipients because they're using fake Social Security numbers. Perhaps employers in Arizona are paying disability insurance, unemployment insurance, income taxes of various kinds for people who are not actual real people, who therefore can't collect the benefits. For Arizona, is this a net plus or a net minus?
I think, and there have been different studies done in our state, and we're a rapidly growing state. We're the fastest growing state in the country. It's probably somewhat of a push. There are some that say maybe a little down, some that say a little the other way. I will say this to my senatorial colleague on the right. One of the things the federal government has not done is at least reimburse the states for costs that by statute they are obligated to pay. I'll give you an example. We have 34,000 inmates in the Arizona prison system. 4,000 are illegal immigrants. The federal government is supposed to reimburse us for the cost of their incarceration under a federal law. And I know it probably will shock you, but we haven't been getting full reimbursement for that. So I sent the Attorney General of the United States a bill, and we typed it up, invoice. And I sent it to him very politely, and about 30 days later, I had not received a response. So I sent him a bill with a late fee. But that bill right now is $350 million. Now, $350 million for me is almost 2 years of all-day kindergarten for every Arizona child in my state. So, yes, there is an economic contribution to be measured. Yes, on this tax side, whether it is there. But some states are affected disproportionately, and border states definitely are affected disproportionately. And so not only do we have the lack of federal comprehensive reform to get the system back into balance, but we, and my constituency, are paying an undue price right now.
You know, Cardinal, a lot of the people who have come illegally to this country are Roman Catholics. But a lot of the people who were already just sitting in their living rooms when those people got here are Roman Catholics too. Do you have to do some hard work in figuring how to talk to the whole church about this challenge? That people who are made uncomfortable by a change in their town, not being able to talk to shop people at counters, finding it difficult to continue to send their kids to a public school that's had a drastic population change. We have to love and treat those people with compassion too, don't we?
Absolutely, and we've been doing this ever since the 1780s, as I said earlier, when in those days signs would be up, Irish need not apply. And so we have been through so many series and waves of immigration, and various groups have been targeted negatively. And I'm not sure why that is in our American society, but while the greatness of our country is built on the immigrant base and the striving and love of the immigrant base, something happens after about the third or fourth generation, and that awareness seems to diminish. So it's a full-time job for me in Southern California to deal with the folks who are at home, as well as the ones who are more recently arrived. However, the ones more recently arrived far outnumber the ones who are at home watching television. But I am impressed by the quality of the people. As has been mentioned by everyone, these are hard-working people. I know we have thousands of immigrant children in our Catholic school system, and the parents are working 2, 3, 4 minimum wage jobs to keep them in Catholic school because they want them to succeed, and they want an advantage for life for them. And so I'm impressed with that aspect. And also, I think that the part of what we need to do, and especially you as students, is we need to make sure we meet personally some immigrants. So much of the rhetoric, as the governor pointed out, has been mean-spirited and divisive, and all the talk shows has been terrible. Many of us here maybe have never met and talked to an immigrant family. It is a very, very enriching experience to meet the people, to put a human face on them, and to not just label them as a group. Then together, seeing them as people, I think we can better find a comprehensive solution that suits and meets the needs of everyone.
Is everybody's story as sympathetic as Alma Sandoval's, Mayor?
No, we just did label everyone as a group, and that's what we can't do. And I have met some wonderful, wonderful people. But I also sat with the parents of Derek Kishline, a 29-year-old city man who was shot between the eyes by an illegal alien. You know, I've seen the other side as well, and it's unfortunate because not everybody that is here is working hard and a nice person. Unfortunately, even if it's a small percentage, there are victims to that group, and we can't forget about them either. Not everybody here is here just for a job. In my job in the city of Hazleton, many times I'm dealing with gang members who are here illegally, trying to recruit Hispanic children to join them, to destroy their lives. Drug dealers, people. We had a domestic incident, for example, where a girl was stabbed multiple times, and this The person was an illegal alien. He jumped out of a second-story window, landed on top of a Hazleton police officer, injuring him as his girlfriend stumbled out onto the sidewalk with the knife protruding out of her stomach. That image will be in my mind forever. Not everyone here is here for the right reasons, and we can't group everyone together. And it's unfortunate for those that are nice people, but again, it's unfair to the victims of the criminal aliens.
From the beginning, you've said that Hazleton acted because the federal government didn't. What should, what must happen on the federal level to help respond to the cry that you've made from your one town in Pennsylvania?
I think enforce the laws we already have. We have immigration laws. Let's enforce them. It is illegal to hire unlawful workers. Let's stop the businesses from doing it. If every city in this country passed the Hazleton Ordinance, if businesses truly could not hire illegal aliens out of fear of being put out of business, through attrition, many illegal aliens would go home. And maybe that number would be more manageable then. Maybe cities like Hazleton would not have to try to deal with it on its own. And this is what I believe. We need to enforce the laws we already have.
That doesn't sound like a revolutionary proposal, Senator. Enforce the laws we already have.
Well, the mayor, I understand the cry for help, and the federal government must act. And it seems to me that if we were to pass a comprehensive immigration act, a lot of his problems would be handled, because as we do an immigration law, we do bring out of the shadows the good, hardworking people. It would be much easier to then pursue those that are here for criminal purposes. But where the mayor goes off wrong is that the current immigration laws are inadequate to meet the needs of our nation. In the immigration bill that we proposed in the Senate, for instance, we had a tamper-proof identification card, which might have been the Social Security number as well. And that card could have then been scanned so that an employer would have the certainty of knowing if they're hiring someone that's here legally or not. What I hear from employers in my state is that they cannot have the certainty that the person they're hiring is here legally or not. They get a Social Security number, but they don't have a way of verifying it. So we need an immigration reform bill. We need an immigration law that is then going to make it possible to do the very thing the mayor says he wants, which is to have a means by which to verify who is here working legally and who is not. And then if we did that, it would be much easier to call out the criminal element that is out there. You know, at the end of the day, crimes are committed. Sometimes crimes are committed by illegal immigrants, but it doesn't taint a population. It's the thing I think is so objectionable about trying to paint with such a broad brush. I realize that in any group there's going to be those who are here to work hard, and there's going to be those that are here to make trouble. The fact of the matter is, I don't think it's any different in this group of illegals than it is in any other segment of our population. And what we must do, regularize their status here, bring them out of the shadows so they can work over the table, and they would never be working for a lower wage job and beat someone out of a job. And at the end of the day, it will bring our country together. It'll allow us to heal. And I think that's really part of the problem we're suffering from, is that we're in a situation where we didn't get the job done in the Congress. We haven't been able to address the issue comprehensively. And we're suffering the consequences of that in many different ways, particularly in places like Hazleton or the governor dealing with it in Arizona.
Yeah, and there's another dimension of that too, Senator, and that's this. California, we have the highest prison population, I think, outside of China. But 98% of them are legal residents. But why are they there? Because our education system is so poor, they don't get educated, and the jobs aren't there. So by focusing on the smaller number of undocumented folks in prison in California, we have completely avoided the real problems. That is, our schools do not produce educated young people who can get a job and keep it and advance. So there's another fallout to it as well.
Again, in a smaller setting, such as Hazleton, our classrooms are overcrowded. There's no question about it. The teachers cannot provide the resources and time that the individuals, the children need. In our situation, if we did not, 10% of Hazleton's population is estimated to be here illegally. If we did not have that illegal population here, maybe the teachers would have more time and there would be more resources that we could give to the young immigrant children who are here not getting the education that maybe they could get. And maybe these children are just being pushed along and will never see the education that we could provide them. And aren't they being cheated? Aren't the new immigrant children being cheated as well when resources are being spread far beyond what we could handle?
During the early part of the year, once this program was set for today, a call went out to the student body to submit questions for this panel, and we'll be moving to that part of the program in just a moment. So if the student questioners could move to their places, while they're doing that, I'd like to ask Governor Napolitano what you need. You've already mentioned the money, but how do you stop the flow? How do you control the flow so that only legally vetted people from other countries come to work in Arizona? What kind of help do you need from the federal government?
Well, I think a couple of things. One is we just plain need to increase the number of visas that we permit. If you are in Mexico now and your spouse is in the United States legally and you are a Mexican citizen, you want to join your spouse in the United States, you have to wait 6 to 7 years to get a visa to do that. We simply haven't adjusted our visas to accommodate the situation that we're in. So we need to increase the number of visas. We need better documentation. We need to increase the port infrastructure that we have, the whole system for granting visas and then being able to look at them as people come across our borders, both land borders and sea and air borders. And then the interior enforcement is absolutely key. Now, this was a essential failure of the 1986 compromise, the so-called amnesty bill of 1986, because we never got the enforcement part of that done. And that implicit promise that we would grant amnesty then and enforce the law going forward was broken. And that's one of the reasons why people are so skeptical right now about the commitment of the Congress and the United States to really enforce the law. So going to the last thing we really need is a very visible and continued law enforcement presence at the border. That's not a wall, but that is a system that includes radar and technology and manpower and better documentation that's staged in different areas from the border that then is coupled with interior enforcement so that there is really an enforcement system that works. And we don't just do it for 1 year, but we have a continued commitment to do that ongoing. That's the way you restore confidence, and I think that's the way we help restore the faith in people that we can deal with the 12 million in a reasonable and fair way. We can have an immigration system that works and one that meets the labor exigencies of our country.
And Ray, if I may add to that, I think that in order for us to be able to get it done in the Congress, there has to be that confidence established. And I think until that is there, that there's going to be a very difficult time getting the votes together for us to be able to have a comprehensive solution. People are going to have to see the fact that border enforcement is taking place, that we have control over our border before they'll want to see something done with the 12 million.
Briefly, Cardinal.
And another aspect of that, too, is that 40% of the undocumented people came here on visas and never left because our government has no ability or system to track anybody once they come on a visa. They're completely forgotten.
Let's go to our first student questioner.
I'd like to thank all the panelists for your attendance, especially Governor Napolitano for representing the state of Arizona. My name is Michelle Salcedo. I am from Phoenix, Arizona. I'm the proud daughter of immigrants, and thanks to them, the first in my family to attend college. 7 years ago, my father was deported to Mexico and restricted from ever returning to the U.S. After 10 years of living in Arizona and establishing our family, my mother found herself as a single parent, supporting 4 children and just compelled to become the breadwinner for our family in a minimum wage job. My question is, what is your view on the issue of family disunification as a result of raids and deportations? And how much of a priority is it to strive for an immigration policy that will stress the unity of families? Thank you.
Simple. That's a very touching story and a very difficult aspect of the law that we're dealing with. It's an imperfect law. I think that family reunification, look, I lived apart from my family for 4 years when I first came to this country. I understand it very personally, and I know how difficult it is. I also don't know exactly how we create a situation where the law is not enforced. So until we come to a solution to this problem, the law will continue to be enforced, enhancing the numbers of people like your family who are going to be touched in a very dramatic and negative way by the enforcement of our immigration laws. So, as the governor said, we have to expand the number of visas. Frankly, some of them for high-tech workers that our nation can use and we would like to have, but also find a way to compassionately deal with family reunification. There's no question that those two are not incompatible, and our nation is big and strong enough to be able to handle that.
When you enter the system, is there the staff currently to find out about the Salcedo family's story in Phoenix and figure out what to do? I get this feeling from talking to people who are trying to navigate various parts of the immigration system that it's not as easy as just explaining your predicament and then they help you figure it out.
Our Senate offices deal with compelling immigration problems every day, dozens of them, of people who are caught in the system, who are lost and need help just to try to find their way through the system. And we do that all the time. It is an unfortunate situation that we're in, and there's not an easy answer. I think the film mentioned that the immigration code is about as complicated as the IRS code. I guarantee you it is every bit that complicated. And the manpower has not ever been there in the enforcement side or in the administration of the system in order to make it work like it should. So part of what we must do, in addition to comprehensive reform, as we do comprehensive reform, is to fund it properly so that we will have the mechanisms in place to actually be able to enforce the law and enact the laws that we will pass.
Cardinal, you wanted to say?
I was just going to say that that's an extremely important point, because the complexity of the immigration laws today, nobody can figure out what they mean. We have priests and religious seminarians coming from other countries. We have to hire immigration attorneys just to get a priest from a country to here under a category that's legal. But because every single page has something new and added, never correcting the former page, it's hopeless. So we need a simplification of the system.
You will hear arguments about how local police departments, state police departments should become cross-certified to enforce our nation's immigration laws. To do that, they have to undergo training. We have some officers in our state. We are doing that to a limited degree. But the notion that you can convert wholesale local police officers, take them away from the normal crimes they're supposed to investigate and prosecute that the mayor's so concerned with, and transform them and make them masters of the immigration law is more complicated than one would lead you to believe.
Let's go to our next student.
Hello, I'm Patrick Ty, a sophomore, also from Phoenix, Arizona. At the age of 16, I was denied an Arizona state driver's license because 2 undocumented immigrants were using my social security number. Even though I have the names and addresses of the illegal immigrants, the local police in Arizona will not arrest them, and ICE, Homeland Security, and the federal government denied me a new social security number. I have experienced difficulty when applying for student loans and making financial investments, and I will also face considerably more challenges when applying for a job or for approval to buy a home or car due to damaged credit caused by illegal immigrants. Where in your policy do you address those like me who are victims of identity theft and other crimes due to undocumented immigrants?
I think that should go to me.
Okay.
And I think you should talk to me after this session. What you've described is actually a classic identity theft. It is a complicated crime when somebody gets their social security number. We do have protocols in place to deal with it in Arizona, be it by an illegal immigrant or by someone who's in the country legally who got a hold of your number and is now using it for all kinds of nefarious purposes. One of the things that it would be nice also to get passed federally is some easier ways at the federal level to get one's credit history cleared so it's not as burdensome and as red tape. And I will tell you, you are in probably the most red tape laden, unfortunate circumstance you can be in right now. But I think I can help you out. So talk to me after this.
There you go. Great. Next student questioner, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Lauren Lyman, and I'm a political science major. I live in Los Angeles, California, where people of different cultures, ethnicities, and socioeconomic statuses live right next to each other, often with considerable tension. Barriers are set in place based on wealth, race, and customs that consequently lead to fear of the other. What do you think we can do to dismantle the fear that continues to diminish our capacity to develop effective immigration reform?
Well, since she's from Los Angeles, I think I get a chance. That's one of our big challenges in all of our cities because of the diversity. Los Angeles, we have Mass every Sunday in 42 languages. And there is no such thing as a monolingual parish in Los Angeles anymore. And one of the challenges I speak to our people all the time is how do we create a sense of unity among the various groups to bring about that sense of unity. And it takes a lot of listening and a lot of hard work and understanding each other. Well, look out here at Notre Dame, your student body has become so diverse, and that enriches it. But how do you get along together? You get along together by getting to know each other, listening to each other's stories, appreciating the values and the culture, and everybody being enriched by that. So that is an ongoing work that we're involved with across Los Angeles right now.
Next student questioner.
Good afternoon. My name is David Van Egmond, and I'm a sophomore finance major. Aliens who came into this country illegally have committed a crime. Why should we reward them for breaking the law by allowing them to stay in this country? Why do you think we should show them a disproportionate amount of compassion as compared to other criminals? Thank you.
When an immigrant breaks a law, they become immediately deportable. If they're here illegally, first of all, they're deportable, and once they break the law, they could be deported even more rapidly. But the criminal justice system also wants to deal with them because there is a crime for which to be dealt with. So, Governor, you might be able to better answer here than me. I just wanted to establish that point.
Well, I think you're going to the basic point is if you're here illegally, and you should go. And I would say that's an easy statement to say, but it doesn't work. And I'll tell you why. Because for the 12 million who are here, many of whom have established roots, have families, have children who are here legally because they were born here, the notion that you're going to have 12 million people go into the adjudicatory process. You need a prosecutor, you need a lawyer, you need a judge, you need a detention cell, you need a bus to take them across the border, you need some place for them to be received. For 12 million people, you're talking about deporting the entire population of Los Angeles. And it simply is unrealistic. And so, because it's unrealistic, all you've done is substitute a slogan for a solution. And to me, the only realistic way to deal with this is to say, we are not going to let you get citizenship without paying a fine, getting in back of the line, staying out of the criminal justice system, learning English. We're not going to do that. We're going to strengthen our nation's borders. We're going to put more resources into interior enforcement and have that whole system done together. That's when we say comprehensive, that's what that means. To me, that is a solution. But simply saying you broke the law, you got to go, then you got to ask yourself the question, well, how does that occur? And you just can't get 12 million people deported without an incredible dislocation, and quite frankly, to me, it's just another way of saying silent amnesty, because it won't happen.
But if the solution is not to endeavor to punish or deport, isn't the front door still open and the lights on saying, come on in, permanently? Just because it's too hard to do anything about it, you have a reasonable chance, if you make it here, of not getting kicked out.
Well, I think if you don't have the kind of enforcement follow-up, the interior things and all the rest, you set up a system, which is what we have now, quite frankly, which is if you've successfully run the gauntlet at the border, you take the risk that you'll never get caught, and you take the economic advantage of being in the United States. So that's why you've got to have the border enforcement and border security. But you also have to deal with the underlying labor issue that's going on. This is a massive labor migration. It's going on all over the world, by the way. It's not just from Mexico, Central America, and the United States. It's basically all over the world from south to north. And you've got to deal with those labor issues. And then you've got to recognize that in this country, The notion that 12 million people are going to show up and go through that process is just not going to happen. And anybody who is at the border will tell you, they'll laugh. They'll say, that's ridiculous, this is silly, ain't gonna happen. It's not an open invitation. You gotta have a system where people who wanna come here to work can apply, get a visa, have their background checked, and all the rest. That's the comprehensive part of reform that we also need.
I believe there's a lack of confidence in the American people have in our own government. Nobody believes that we are going to do anything about this problem. Our borders are still open today. How do we control the flow of illegal aliens into the country if we're talking about forgiveness in dealing with it, which I understand that discussion, but don't we need to secure our borders first to stop the flow into the country and then figure out a way of what we're going to do with the 12 million that are here? I think there's a lack of confidence the American people have that our government can get this done.
So you're not disagreeing with the governor as much as just saying the emphasis and the chronology should be a little different.
Absolutely.
Border first, then this other stuff.
Absolutely.
In essence, that's what is occurring right now, because we have appropriated through the Congress about $3.2 billion strictly for border security, to hire 18,000 more border agents. Even though the governor doesn't know that it's necessarily needed, you're getting a fence, about 300 miles of fencing, vehicle barriers and things like that, electronic surveillance. So the border is increasingly being secure, which is leading to more of a labor shortage. And I think increasingly, because of the way it's happened, you are getting border enforcement first. But one thing I want to add, Ray, that I want to make sure we don't finish the discussion without talking about it, I think is so very important as we talk about a labor migration, which it is, that it's so important that we improve the lives of the people in Latin America so that they may find decent employment at home and be less in need of migrating in order to find work and be able to feed their families. And there's several ways we can do that. One is certainly with the free trade agreements that we signed with Mexico first and now with Central America. It is being expanded into Peru, Panama, and Colombia. Congress should accept and approve those trade agreements, which is great reluctance to do by the majority right now. They need to happen. And in addition to that, Senator Menendez and I have introduced a bill which seeks to assist in Latin America with $2 billion of aid that would go directly towards health, education, and housing. Three elements of policy that has been too often and too long not been at the forefront of what America looks to Latin America to do. And I think those are the kinds of things that will help improve lives in Latin America and at the end of the day make our neighbors a better neighborhood and also maybe diminish the number of people who necessarily want to come here to this magnet of employment.
And Cardinal, you wanted to say?
Well, I was going to say, it seems a lot of the discussion presumes there's one border. And there isn't one border. There are 4 borders, southern, northern, and the 2 coasts. And all of those need to be protected. And not only those, every city in the United States that has international flights is a border. And I would like to see attention given to all the borders, not just the one along the south.
Our next student questioner.
Good afternoon and thank you. My name is Florentina Tovar and I am the proud daughter of 2 immigrants. Being a student in South Florida, I've become very acquainted with the DREAM Act, which is an act currently being debated, which would grant immigrant students it would permit them to apply for temporary status so they could complete at least 2 years of college or serve in the military. And after doing so, be eligible for permanent status or possible citizenship. I want to ask your opinion on this DREAM Act and whether or not you support it.
Cardinal's been dying to talk about the DREAM Act.
That's right. The DREAM Act.
And this wasn't even a setup.
That's right. I didn't know you were going to ask the question, but I'm delighted. The DREAM Act, DREA, means Development, Relief, Education for minor students. And what it does, it takes all of those students who came here, were brought here as minors, some very small, brought here by their parents, finish high school and cannot get into a college that has any federal or government funding. What the DREAM Act will do is to allow that person to go 2 years to college, trade school, or the military, and after that, successfully complete that, to begin a process towards working towards legal permanent status after a 6-year period of time. And I'm very much in favor of that because we have brilliant young people in our high schools who cannot get into college. And what we're going to do is take this college-bound group and put them working in McDonald's. That's what we're doing now. So I am all in favor of the DREAM Act. In fact, that was going to be my assignment, that 8,000 undergraduates and the 3,000 graduate students of Notre Dame contact your home U.S. Senator, because there is a possibility we can get this passed before Thanksgiving. And I am all for it, and I think let's get some pressure. That's something you can do today. Email them, send them a text message.
Does it have a shot, Senator?
It does have a shot. I've been very reluctant to look at immigration reform piecemeal because I think it's so necessary that we deal with it all comprehensively. If we start taking this little bit and that little bit, next thing you know, all we'll have left is what to do with the 12 million, a difficult problem. The DREAM Act, I feel very special toward it. I know that how difficult it was for me to get a college education, and I can certainly understand that America is better if we allow young people that are here and are competent, like the fellow who stopped me at the Miami airport to tell me his son was #1 in his graduating class, but he couldn't go to college. That's not good for our country. We need our best and our brightest, however they, may come from, but if it were brought here through no fault of their own, they didn't break any laws, they were minor children when their parents brought them, and after a period of time of being in this country, if they graduate from a high school, and then will go through and complete either 2 years of schooling or 2 years in the military, to give them an opportunity to have a chance at the fullness of the American dream, I think it's in America's best interest. Can it happen? It depends how many of your emails we get, because there are a lot of people who don't think it should happen, and I've been hearing from them quite regularly. There is a chance that it will be taken up sometime in the next, between now and Thanksgiving. And it is the one thing that could potentially happen in the absence of a more comprehensive approach. But it is going to take a tremendous outpouring of support for this kind of legislation, which frankly gets an awful lot of noise from those that are against any of these vehicles. And it will be discussed as something that is a backdoor way of chain migrating and this and that. Frankly, it's just about young people getting an education. And I think it is a good thing, and I hope that the Cardinal can be persuasive with you and others to get that kind of groundswell going.
But even what for many is pretty feel-good legislation. It's going to cost you money, right, Governor?
You know what? I don't think you take a broken immigration policy out on young people. I think that's wrong, and if I were in the Senate, I would vote for that bill with alacrity.
The next questioner.
Good afternoon. My name is John Corrigan, and I'm a freshman majoring in political science and English. I'm also a lifelong resident of Kingston, Pennsylvania, a town about 20 minutes north of Hazleton. And as such, I have personally witnessed some of the effects of illegal immigration on northeastern Pennsylvania. I want to specifically draw your attention to the fact that in the wake of the passage of Hazleton's illegal immigration ordinance, several other local towns have considered similar ordinances. Often these towns with names like Forty Fort and Nanticoke are already economically troubled and can hardly afford the financial and legal consequences associated with such an ordinance. So with this in mind, what is the overall effect of one city's illegal immigration ordinance upon its neighbors?
Interesting question.
Well, thank you, and it's nice to see a fellow Northeastern Pennsylvania here at Notre Dame. There's a huge effect when a city passes an ordinance such as Hazleton's. We have been sued. The attorneys who have sued the city of Hazleton are looking for $2.4 million from the city for legal fees in fighting this battle. That obviously would bankrupt a city such as Hazleton, and economically distressed cities could never withstand that kind of law bill. So really, Hazleton's battle becomes a battle for so many other cities across the United States. I believe there were up to 100 different cities around the United States that were proposing the Hazleton Ordinance or talking about this ordinance. So this battle, which I believe will end up in the Supreme Court, will have an effect on cities all across the country.
I think John's question also went to Hazleton's nearest neighbors, places like 44th and Nanticoke, which don't yet have ordinances like that. If you're pushing people out, are you in effect...
It's a ripple effect. It's like a puddle. If you step into the puddle, the water is going to splash outward. And unfortunately, many illegal aliens will pick up and just move down the street, down the road to the next community, which forced other communities around city to try to pass this ordinance as well. And again, it's the cause of a lack of enforcement on the federal level that has really put some local municipalities in the corner as to how do we protect ourselves? How do we protect the people in our community? When you take an oath of office that you will protect and defend the people in your community, how do you tell them there's nothing you can do and watch your city being drained of its resources? So it is a sad result that other cities also will look to have to defend themselves.
Governor, you wanted to say?
Well, I just want to, that goes to the point I made in my opening comments, which is to say that in the absence of comprehensive federal immigration reform, states and cities are now moving independently. And what is happening slowly but surely is the Hazletons, Arizona, I signed the most aggressive employer sanction law in the country just a few months ago. We are going ahead and moving ahead and making decisions that we think are in the best interest of our state, given the situation as it is. And perhaps the one good that could come out of that dislocation is the tangible illustration around the United States about why it is better public policy to have one uniform immigration law that is uniformly enforced.
I just had a question for the mayor. After you passed your ordinance, wasn't it set aside by a federal court?
That's correct. There was a restraining order immediately put on the city, so we never enforced the ordinance. Right. However, we did witness people leaving, many in the middle of the night, as soon as the ordinance was passed.
And what was the reasoning of the federal judge?
Well, there was a trial to be heard, so he put a restraining order on the city until the trial was complete, and until he would make a decision, which he has. He ruled against the city of Hazleton. Right. Which we are appealing.
The basis?
Well, it was a 204-page decision. Yes. So there were he had many bases. Preemption was the main.
Sure.
However, we feel that the city has a right to restrict business licenses, so we'll appeal it.
Well, this is one of the downsides, of course, of this morass we're in, that forces local cities and towns and states to take action that the federal government would not. Imagine trying to run the armed forces this way, the United States.
And I agree completely. I wanted to just add to what the governor said, is that it is a ripple effect, and there are other cities that also pass sanctuary city laws, and that's something we haven't talked about, but it's at both ends. The day we failed, I remember at the press conference that I and a few others held afterwards, a post-mortem, if you will, I remember saying that one of the sad legacies of our failure to act will be that now cities across America will be doing what Hazleton has done, and others will become sanctuary cities. There'll be a hodgepodge because the federal government didn't do its job and we didn't have a comprehensive federal law.
Let's go to our next student questioner.
Good afternoon. My name is Shireen Awad. I'm a third-year law student here at the university, as well as an international student here on a student visa for the past 7 years. I recently completed my law school research last year on the following question. Currently, federal, state, and local authorities are debating and passing legislation that deals directly with illegal immigration. Given the advantages of securing an efficient and uniform system of immigration reform, what are the advantages and disadvantages of a multi-level government response to this question, and do you think it's possible? Thank you.
I think that, did you hear that?
I didn't hear it all.
The core of the question is something actually we've just been talking about. Given the desirability of achieving a uniform and efficient system of immigration regulation, what are the advantages and/or disadvantages of a multi-level government response to the immigration question? And do we have one right now?
I think that's effectively what we do have. We have it on the law enforcement side, certainly, where more of us have been augmenting federal law enforcement with state and local law enforcement resources. We do it now more statutorily because cities like Hazleton and states like Arizona are now moving independently of the federal government. And we will have it judicially, I think, fairly soon as well, because different federal courts around the country undoubtedly will rule differently on the constitutionality of some of these laws. So we will have a hodgepodge of multi-level enforcement. It is, in my view, a much better public policy to have one uniform set of standards so everybody knows the rules and have those standards enforced. But unless and until that happens, you're going to have in the immigration area a multi-level, actually very confusing set of rules that people will have to abide by.
Go ahead.
And if we do, what will we do about sanctuary cities? Once there is one law, how do we address cities where the elected officials refuse to enforce federal laws?
I think that there are consequences to local action, and I think the mayor has, obviously, I don't think sanctuary cities can override the federal prerogative. In other words, I think the federal laws will supersede over any local laws, Mayor. But I think also that there are consequences to actions. And I think communities, before they pass laws, need to think about the consequences. The mayor lost a lawsuit in court. If he in fact lost, and the other side is entitled to attorney's fees. He's talking now about a $2-point-some million judgment that could be levied against the city for the cost of the attorney's fees for the other side. It could bankrupt the city. These are the consequences of acting in a way that frankly may not be in the city's best interest in the long run. Maybe the better way is to deal with the problem as a law enforcement issue and not as an immigration issue. And maybe the better way, of course, would be at the end of the day for us in the federal government get our act together and be able to pass a comprehensive bill.
Do you have a response to that? Well, that maybe this wasn't the best way to go?
Who would not want to stop, you know, a citizen from being shot between the eyes? You know, if I could stop crimes from being committed, obviously I would do that. Small cities work with a very small budget, and it becomes impossible at times when you're overrun by problems such as illegal immigration. That meter is constantly running. That one murder, we spent over half of our yearly budget in overtime in the police department. That's out of our control. I don't believe we can without the federal government doing what it should. But if the federal government won't, what would you do if you were the mayor? Would you sit back and watch your city being destroyed? I'm one that can't. I took an oath of office, and I will protect all the citizens in our community. And unfortunately, I feel that I didn't have a choice.
Our next student questioner, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Victor Carmona, and I was born in the U.S. but grew up in Mexico. After college, I served the Catholic bishops in Mexico, analyzing immigration issues there and coordinating the church's immigration outreach ministries in Mexico. Today, I'm a graduate student in moral theology here at Notre Dame, and like others here in the audience, I am interested in the role of faith and citizenship in public life. What role does your own faith commitment play in your perspective on the immigration debate and on the leadership that you provide to your own communities? Thank you.
Well, Cardinal, I figured you'd jump right in there. I'm guessing you go to church regularly.
Well, obviously, as a disciple of Jesus, for me, my faith commitment takes me right to the Gospels and the teaching and example of Jesus and the compassion of Jesus. And I really think that while we've had a lot of disagreements across the country about how to deal with all of this, I was talking to some bishops in July when I was in Rome who were from Italy, Germany, France, and those countries, and the way those countries have dealt with the problem of people coming in as opposed to what we're doing is pretty scary. And so even though we've had disagreements, I think the American people in general are far more welcoming and understanding and want to integrate newly arrived people into the fabric of our society and to do so legally. So I think we're on the right track.
Mayor, what role does your own faith commitment play in your perspective on the immigration debate and the leadership you provide to your community?
Well, I am a man of faith, and this has been very troubling for me as a person, as an individual, in dealing with questioning my role as a leader in the community and what my own heart would like to do. But again, I realize that there needs to be compassion also for the victims of illegal immigrants. We had a 6-year-old girl in the city who was raped by an illegal alien. I have compassion for her and her mother as well. It's heart-wrenching. This problem, this issue is heart-wrenching on both sides. And we could spend forever trading stories of those who have been affected, those who came to America for a better life, and those that become innocent victims of others that came here illegally. I took an oath to protect and defend the laws of our country, and I believe that's what America has to offer. We have to enforce the rule of law. If this country is going to continue to offer the opportunities, we can't turn our eyes and close our eyes to those that break the law. And it is a very passionate and sometimes troubling issue to deal with in a leadership position.
Governor?
When I was sworn in my first time as governor, I chose as the theme of my inaugural, many lands, many peoples, many faiths, but one Arizona, reflecting, I think, the diversity of my state, but indeed of our country. And I think where my faith coincides with that is, as I try to lead my state through this difficult, hard issue, to do it in a way that emphasizes the rule of law, but shows that at certain points, compassion can be a part of the emphasis on the rule of law. To say, yes, we need border security. On the other hand, we need to allow more visas for people to cross legally. Yes, we need more interior enforcement. But yes, we should have a DREAM Act for children who were brought over through no independent action of their own, to create the balance and the kind of holistic look at a very complicated issue so that people can have faith that we are trying to do the right thing.
Ray, I think that we are very blessed as Catholics to have the richness that our faith teaches us about the social teachings of the church, essentially, which is, to me, a preeminent way in which I try to filter my attitude, my outlook on the difficult issues of the day. It isn't just on the issue of immigration, which is one of that tears at you. I mean, the mayor makes a very compelling case about criminality in a small community and how to deal with that very difficult issue. But then on the other hand, you have also the very compelling issue of a young boy who just wants to go to college, and where is our responsibility as Catholics? And so frankly, it can go into other issues, the whole issue of stem cell research, how very difficult it is to try to figure out whether the research could save a life, but at the same time, the destruction of a human embryo, I don't think that's right. And so it's never easy, and the job doesn't pay nearly enough for all the very difficult moral dilemmas that we face each and every day. And what I try to do is to do to the best of my ability to always be true to what my faith teaches, to what I believe to be the teachings that I presume to want to follow, while at the same time understanding that there are no perfect answers in very complicated issues of policy that affect millions of people.
Well, that brings us to the end of this forum. Thank you very much for coming and giving us your attention today. And I hope that we've managed in these 2 hours to build a platform under your feet, a place for you to stand as you continue to work through this issue for yourselves. Please don't be silent in your own lives as citizens. Talk to the people who work for you in various levels of government around the country, and tell them what you think about how we move forward from here. Now, you may applaud for this wonderful panel.